Messengers are no longer necessary, Master Applegat. For some time, Applegat had also been thinking he was no longer of any use to anyone. He was 36 and small but strong and wiry, wasn't afraid of hard work, and had, naturally, a head of gold. He could have found other work to support himself and his wife, to put a bit of money by for the dowries of his 2 as yet unmarried daughters, and to continue helping the married one whose husband, the sad loser, was always unlucky in his business ventures. But Applegat couldn't and didn't want to imagine any other job. He was a royal mounted messenger, and that was that. And then, suddenly, after a long period of being forgotten and humiliatingly idle, Applegat was once again needed, and the highways and forest tracks once again echoed to the sound of hooves. Just like the old days, messengers began to travel the land, bearing news from town to town. Applegat knew why. He saw a lot and heard even more. It was expected that he would immediately erase each message from his memory once it had been given, that he would forget it so as to be unable to recall it even under torture. But Applegat remembered. He knew why kings had suddenly stopped communicating with the help of magic and sorcerers. The news that the messengers were carrying was meant to remain a secret from them. Kings had suddenly stopped trusting sorcerers, stopped confiding their secrets in them. Applegat didn't know what had caused this sudden cooling off in the friendship between kings and sorcerers, and wasn't overly concerned about it. He regarded both kings and magic users as incomprehensible creatures, unpredictable in their deeds, particularly when times were becoming hard. And the fact that times were now hard could not be ignored, not if one travelled across the land from castle to castle, from town to town, from kingdom to kingdom. There were plenty of troops on the roads. With every step one came across an infantry or cavalry column, and every commander you met was edgy, nervous, curt, and as self-important as if the fate of the entire world rested on him alone. The cities and castles were also full of armed men, and a feverish bustle went on there day and night. The usually invisible burgraves and castellans now ceaselessly rushed along walls and through courtyards, angry as wasps before a storm, yelling, swearing, and issuing orders and kicks. Day and night, lumbering columns of laden wagons rolled towards strongholds and garrisons, passing carts on their way back, moving quickly, unburdened and empty. Herds of frisky 3-year-old mounts, taken straight out of stables, kicked dust up on the roads. Ponies, not accustomed to bits, nor armed riders, cheerfully enjoyed their last days of freedom, giving stable boys plenty of extra work and other road users no small trouble. To put it briefly, war hung in the hot, still air. Applegat stood up in his stirrups and looked around. Down at the foot of the hill a river sparkled, meandering sharply among meadows and clusters of trees. Forests stretched out beyond it to the south. The messenger urged his horse on. Time was running out. He'd been on the road for 2 days. The royal order and mail had caught up with him in Haga, where he was resting after returning from Tretogor. He had left the stronghold by night, galloping along the highway, following the left bank of the Pontar, crossed the border with Temeria before dawn, and now, at noon of the following day, was already at the bank of the Ismena. Had King Foltest been in Vizima, Applegat would have delivered him the message that night. Unfortunately, the king was not in the capital. He was residing in the south of the country, in Maribor, almost 200 miles from Vizima. Applegat knew this. So, in the region of the White Bridge, he left the westward leading road and rode through woodland towards Ellender. He was taking a risk. The Scoia'tael continued to roam the forests, and woe betide anyone who fell into their hands or came within arrow shot. The Scoia'tael, commonly known as the Squirrels, are non-human gorillas, predominantly elves. Their ranks also include halflings and dwarves, and they are so named due to their habit of attaching squirrel tails to their caps or clothing. Allied with Nilfgaard, motivated by the racism of men, they fight all humans in the northern kingdoms. But a royal messenger had to take risks. Such was his duty. He crossed the river without difficulty. It hadn't rained since June, and the Ismena's waters had fallen.